Micah Bell doesn't explode onto the scene. He just slithers into it. Cold, calculating, unbothered. When the gang first meets him in the snowy mountains, he's already watching. He knows the game, even if Dutch doesn't yet know he's playing it. He's not loud and he's not unhinged, he's just patient. And that patience is what makes him dangerous. Because Micah isn't here to believe in the gang. He's not here for the cause. He's not here for the loyalty or family or freedom. Micah's here for Micah, and he's willing to wrap himself in someone else's dream long enough to turn it into a weapon. He doesn't act like a villain, he acts like a solution. The guy who gets things done, the guy who isn't afraid to get his hands dirty, the guy Dutch thinks he needs as the world begins to close in. And that's the genius of Micah's arc. He doesn't kill the gang. He convinces it to rot itself from the inside. Micah watches, waits, whispers. He feeds Dutch's paranoia, fuels his ego, makes him believe that Arthur and Hosea are slowing things down, that loyalty looks like obedience, that anyone who questions him isn't a brother, they're a traitor. Micah doesn't need to lead. He just needs to be there when the center falls apart. And when the cracks start forming, he doesn't rush. He just keeps smiling. Because he knows exactly what kind of man Dutch is becoming. And he knows how to make himself indispensable to it. Micah never had to take Dutch's place. He just had to reflect him, amplify his worst instincts, feed the parts of him that were already starting to rot. Because Dutch doesn't fall apart because of Micah. He falls apart because of himself. Micah is just the whisper in his ear. The one who never questions. The one who always agrees. The one who tells Dutch what he wants to hear, not what he needs to. And that kind of loyalty, man, it's seductive. Arthur questions Dutch. Hosea softens him. Charles walks his own path. But Micah? Micah nods. He follows. He supports. And in a world where Dutch is losing control of his vision, Micah becomes useful. Micah doesn't offer ideas. He offers validation. He doesn't care if the plan works. He just cares that Dutch believes it will. And the more the gang fractures, the more Dutch clings to that voice in the background, the one that says, they're turning on you. The one that says, only I've got your back. Micah is a parasite, but a clever one. He doesn't latch onto the strongest member of the gang. He latches onto the weakest part of Dutch. The part that can't handle doubt. The part that needs to feel right, even when he's clearly not. And he feeds it, until Dutch doesn't see the difference between loyalty and silence. Until Dutch starts to believe that the only truth worth hearing is the one coming from Micah's mouth. That's the genius of Micah's villainy. He doesn't lead by force. He leads simply by erosion. He wears Dutch's trust like a mask, lets the rest of the gang turn on each other, and positions himself as the one voice that never wavers. And Dutch, desperate for control, lets it happen. Because by the time he realizes what Micah really is, it's already too late. There's a moment in every great villain arc where the mask finally slips, where the charming, useful face they wore peels back and you see them, not as a rival, not as a foil, but as a real threat. For Micah Bell, that moment comes slowly, in pieces. A word here, a shove there, a beating that goes too far, a body left behind. At first, it's just unease. He mocks the women in the camp, stirs conflict between friends, pushes missions that leave bodies in the dust with no remorse. He laughs when he shouldn't, smiles when there's blood in the air. But then, the mask falls completely. The betrayal is quiet, off-screen, at first. We learn he's been talking to the Pinkertons. That the noose tightening around the gang's neck wasn't just bad luck. It was orchestrated all along. Micah fed them the information, sold out his family for immunity, for status, for leverage, and he doesn't flinch. Because Micah, he never loved the gang. He never believed in the cause. He was never chasing freedom. He was waiting for power, for a chance to climb, for a way to make himself untouchable while everyone else went down swinging. And what makes it worse? What makes him so uniquely despicable is that he gets away with it for a while. He becomes Dutch's right hand, forces Arthur out, breaks what little trust remains, and for a time, he wins. Not with strength, but with rot. Micah isn't the kind of villain you respect. He's the kind of villain you recognize. He's every voice that ever whispered poison in the ears of someone in charge. Every parasite that smiled while burning things down behind the scenes. Every grinning traitor who claimed loyalty while sharpening their knife. And by the time Arthur finally calls him what he is, a rat, the damage has already been done. Because Micah didn't just betray the gang, he ended it. Micah Bell isn't a villain you grow to hate. You hate him immediately. From the drawl of his voice to the twitch in his grin, everything about him is designed to irritate, to needle, to provoke. He's not a charismatic enemy. He's not cool. He's not tragic. He's a worm in boots, dressed in filth and chewing tobacco, spewing venom from the moment he opens his mouth. And Rockstar knew exactly what they were doing. Micah isn't complex. He's not layered at all. He's not built for any form of empathy. He's built to be loathed, and that's what makes him effective. Because in a game as morally gray as Red Dead Redemption 2, where even Arthur, a killer, finds redemption, Micah stands alone as a character with no hidden nobility. There's nothing to redeem, no pain to unpack, no secret to hurt, just raw, predatory ambition. And Rockstar reinforces that at every turn. Micah isn't just cruel, he's smug about it. He mocks the weak. He antagonizes the loyal. He brings chaos to every room he enters, then acts like he's the victim when someone finally shoves back. And you can't touch him. That's the genius, and that's the frustration. The game makes you watch. Micah pushes, taunts, schemes, and you have to bite your tongue, because Dutch believes him, because the gang lets it happen, because Arthur's hands are tied by the very loyalty Micah weaponizes. And the hatred, man, it just builds. That's what makes this eventual fate feel so earned, because Micah isn't just an antagonist to Arthur, he's an antagonist to you, the player, to your patience, your ideals, your fantasy of justice in a world where there isn't any. Micah Bell was never meant to be a villain you understood. He was meant to be the last face you see before the dream dies. Micah Bell dies the way he lived, grinning, filthy, and a gun in his hand. Not as a fallen friend, not as a rival turned enemy, just a rat caught in the light too late. The final standoff at the end of Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like cleanup. Years have passed since Arthur's death. Dutch has vanished into silence. John Marston has tried to build a life, and yet Micah still lingers. Like a disease that never got treated. Like unfinished business buried beneath snow and rot. When John finally finds him, Micah hasn't changed. Not even a little. He's still loud, still mocking, still draped in blood, money, and arrogance. He hasn't grown up. He hasn't learned. He's just festered. And then Dutch steps out of the shadows, and everything comes full circle. Because this moment, isn't about John. It's about Dutch finally seeing what Arthur saw. About all those years of silence catching up in a single gesture. Dutch doesn't say much. He just pulls the trigger. Not for honor, not for justice. Just because, well, he knows. Micah was never a brother, never loyal, never one of them. He was a rot in the foundation, and by the time anyone noticed, it was already too late. That's why this death doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like a release. A breath exhaled after holding it for too long. Not because Micah deserved it, but because the story needed it. Because every minute he was alive, Arthur's death lingered like a question without an answer. And now, the question's gone. Because Micah Bell, the man who burned the gang from within, who smiled while the family collapsed, who made loyalty feel like a trap, he's finally dead. Not mourned, never forgiven, just finished. And for a game to give us tragedy, loss, and moral ambiguity, that might be the only moment of true catharsis it offers. Not a happy ending, just a necessary one.